What's going on, everybody out there? I hope you're having a good Sunday night, and I hope you had a good weekend. This week is WWE week on USA Network. That should be good because tomorrow's the Slammies, and then we get a live SmackDown, which finally we get a live SmackDown on Tuesday night. And Wednesday, I believe, is Tribute to the Troops and also NXT that was taped in London. They'll be showing those matches. I think they're taped 3 of them that they'll be putting on NXT this Wednesday from London. But this video is not about wrestling. It's about my video game collection that I used to own. I used to own a lot of video games from N64 and GameCube, Nintendo GameCube. I have the list. They're right here. A lot of pages of games I used to own. Like 3 or 4 pages. I got a list of all the games I used to own. Sadly, I sold them all. Back in November '06, I sold them all. I sold my GameCube in probably over 25 games, and I sold my N64 in a lot of games for to a video game store for a PS, I think 2, for a PS2 back in '06 because I didn't have one. And I wanted a PS2 so I could play Raw versus SmackDown video game. Or SmackDown versus Raw, it was called. So, and I'm not saying I was bored with GameCube. They had a lot of great games, but it was time to sell it and move on and get a PlayStation 2. So here's a list of my games that I used to own. I don't have them anymore, but I have a list of them. So I thought it'd be interesting to read them all and tell everybody what games I used to own. Maybe you'll be interested in watching this. Maybe you won't be. That's okay. You don't have to watch. But if you're a gamer and a fan of old video games, maybe you'll be entertained. So first I'm going to start off with Nintendo 64 games I used to own. Ken Griffey Jr. Slugfest Baseball for N64. I used to own that. N64 WWF No Mercy. I used to own that game. WWF Warzone. I think it came out in '99 or 2000 for N64. And then came out, or Warzone I think came out in '99 or '98. Can't remember. Could even came out in 2000. WWF Attitude for N64, I think, came out a year after Warzone. And Attitude and WWF Warzone were basically the same game, the same gameplay. The graphics were decent. Warzone graphics were not that great, but they were still good for the times on the N64. Attitude, WWF Attitude game, the graphics were better than the Warzone. But personally, I enjoyed the gameplay of WWF No Mercy for N64. The gameplay was awesome. And WWF WrestleMania 2000 for N64 was also great gameplay and pretty decent graphics. N64 GoldenEye. That's a James Bond game. It was pretty damn fun to play. I played that game a lot back in the day for hours and hours and hours. WCW versus NWO Revenge for the N64. I own that. Here we go. What else do I own? N64 WWF WrestleMania 2000 I used to own it. N64 1080 snowboarding game. It was pretty fun. Had a lot of pretty fun music in it. Good music. N64 Major League Baseball. That game was decent, but not as good as Ken Griffey Jr. baseball. WCW versus NWO World Tour. I own that game, and that I loved. I used to play that game for hours and hours. I loved it. ECW for N64. ECW's first ever video game they ever came out with. I got it. It was called ECW Hardcore Revolution. It was a decent game. Couldn't do many moves, really. The gameplay was like WWF Warzone and WWF Attitude. It was probably the same company that made the WWF Warzone and Attitude game. They probably made ECW Hardcore Revolution. I believe the company that made the ECW game was Acclaim. So it was like the same graphics as WWF Warzone and WWF Attitude. But basically, I bought the ECW game because I was a big mark for ECW back then. When the game was released, I think in 2000. Okay, now N64. I think that's it for the N64 games on my list that I used to own. I thought I used to own... Yeah, I missed one. N64 Road Rash 64. It was a pretty fun game, motorcycle racing. I always enjoyed the Road Rash games on Sega Genesis. I thought they were pretty damn fun to play. And the N64 one, the N64 Road Rash 64 was fun also, but the Sega Genesis games were much funner in my opinion. Because you would like race side to side in the Sega Genesis Road Rash. You could bump each other when you were racing. You could bump the other bikers. Not if you went back really far in the game with your bike and then went forward, you could slam into another bike and knock the biker off his bike, and you'd go flying, and his bike would go flying. That was pretty awesome. And then when you would be next to bikers in the Sega Genesis one, you could steal weapons from the other bikers. You could get a billy club. You could get a chain. And even Road Rash 3, you could steal and get a cattle prod weapon. Those shockers that I believe they shock cows with to kill them. Anyways, the cattle prods, you could steal those from the bikers and then shock the other bikers that were playing as a computer. You could shock them and then their hands would go up in the air and they couldn't steer their bike, so they'd crash. And that was pretty awesome. So, I think that's it for the N64 games. Now on to GameCube. All the GameCube games I used to own. Starting off with GameCube's Midway Arcade Hits. These were old games from basically, I think, Sega Genesis. These were old games on this Arcade Hits. I think Sonic the Hedgehog was on there. Maybe Pit Fighter. And some other old games. Up next, I used to own Major League Baseball for the GameCube. I think it's just called Major League Baseball or MVP Major League Baseball. For GameCube, I owned the game American Chopper, from a reality show. They came out with a video game, and for some reason I bought it. Because back then I was a fan of the reality show American Chopper, where they would build bikes. GameCube, a game called Strike Force, which was a bowling video game. It got boring really quick, but for some reason I wanted a bowling game. Because I am a fan of going bowling in real life, and it's pretty fun to go out with friends and go bowling, or to take a girlfriend out and go bowling. GameCube, I used to have Call of Duty, the first ever Call of Duty. I used to have it. Another GameCube game, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I used to have that. Another GameCube game, Godzilla Destroy. I think that was the entire name of it. Godzilla Destroy. More GameCube games. I used to have WWE Crush Hour. It was like It was a racing game of like WWE cars that were WWE themed cars used to race around in a circle and destroy other cars and blow them up. It was a pretty fun game. I used to own, for GameCube, a game called Hot Wheels Velocity. It was pretty fun. GameCube, Tiger Woods PGA Tour Golf. GameCube, I used to own WWE WrestleMania 20. I think it was 20. For GameCube, I used to own Madden NFL 2004. Another GameCube game. James Bond 007 From Russia with Love. It was called, I think. GameCube MVP Baseball 2005 I used to own. That game was pretty fun. Had some great theme music in it. Some great songs they picked to put in the game. GameCube James Bond 007 Nightfire. That game was pretty damn fun. It was a great game. Great James Bond game. GameCube ATV Quad Power Racing. GameCube WWE WrestleMania 18. GameCube, I used to have Need for Speed. I forget which one, but I had one of them. GameCube Reign of Fire. It was the game based on the movie Reign of Fire, which had dragons in it. GameCube, I had Call of Duty Part 2. GameCube NASCAR Thunder 2005, I think, or 6. GameCube, I had Metroid Prime. That game was pretty fun. GameCube, I had FIFA 2006 World Cup soccer game. GameCube, I had Legends of Wrestling game. GameCube True Crime. I think the first True Crime was called Streets of New York, I think, and the second one might have been Streets of LA or whatever. I also had True Crime Part 2. And for GameCube, I had a baseball game that was pretty damn fun. It was called Home Run King. More GameCube games I have, and this will end the list. GameCube James Bond Agent Under Fire. Another James Bond 007 Everything. I think it was called Everything or Nothing. I always used to love the James Bond games on N64 and then GameCube. They were really fun to play. GameCube Rampage Total Destruction. That game was pretty fun. You would climb up buildings and destroy them, and you could eat people. Is like King Kong or whoever the Rampage character was. He looked like King Kong at least, or some type of monkey. GameCube MLB Slugfest 2004. That game was pretty fun. I think it had A-Rod on the cover when he was with the Texas Rangers. Metroid Prime 2 for GameCube. Need for Speed. Underground. I don't know which. I think they might have made an Underground 2, but this just says Need for Speed Underground for GameCube. Mario Kart Double Something for GameCube. Another Need for Speed for GameCube. I used to have 3 Need for Speed games for GameCube, and they always were really fun to play. So Need for Speed, I don't know which one that is, but it's one of them for GameCube. Mario Superstars baseball game for GameCube. That was pretty fun. And the last game was for GameCube on my list that I used to own is WWE Day of Reckoning. That game was pretty entertaining and pretty good and pretty fun to play. So there are all my games. I sold them all. Or I used to own them all and sold them all in November 06. And the total sale that I got from selling all these games and for selling a Nintendo 64 and controllers and memory cards and a GameCube controller and a GameCube memory card, the total that I got back was $260. $69.93. Here it is, as I showed you. There's a list of all these games. I don't think I can pull it apart. Anyways, it's like 4 pages of all my games that I used to own. I saved it just because I felt like it. I saved it so I could look at the list in the future to see what games I used to have. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this short video on my GameCube and N64 games I used to own in the past. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye for now, everybody.